Hey, Sean here from SpeedCubeyView.com. We're going to talk about inverse scramble and NISS, which is normal inverse scramble switching. So they're kind of the same thing. Inverse is very straightforward as far as what it is, but it can be weird to wrap your brain around because it's not something we would do in a speed solve, but something that is really cool in how it works. And just in general, let's just first talk about what the inverse is. If we had, let's say, a scramble that was F2 R U R prime, the inverse of that would be R U prime R prime F2. You go the other direction from where you did the first time. And then anything that is regular is counterclockwise, so prime, and anything that is prime goes clockwise, so regular. And then the double moves, 180-degree moves, just end up staying the same because you'll be back at the same spot anyways. Now here's why this is really cool. That if we have a scramble, let's do the inverse. I'm going to just invert the scramble. And so I'm going to start, instead of with R prime, U prime, F, I'm going to go backwards and do F prime, U, R, U, B2, R prime.
U2, L, B, D, F, R prime, B2, R, U, R2, D prime, B2, D, R2, B2, U2, R2, U prime, F prime, U, R.
For a while when I started Fewest moves, I would write that out on my paper. When I started, I would just write it out. And now I've gotten used to just reading it backwards. If you need to write it out, do that. It's good practice to do it anyways, but you want to get to the point where you don't need to, because that'll just save a few seconds or a minute. And now I'm going to solve the inverse of this scramble. Now, I was able to do a nice X cross there. And now I solved it that way. So you might be asking, cool. How does that help? What does that do for us? What that does is it gives you a whole nother solution, because that solution I just had, if I invert the solution and go backwards, that would solve the regular one. So the inverse solution to the inverse scramble solves the regular one. What this does is it gives you two different scrambles you can solve. And this is completely legal to do. That's how that works. So let's talk about what's happening. I'm going to do the inverse on this one again. So here's the inverse. And then let's go back to the regular with this cue. So what's happening when we do the inverse? So in the regular one, right here I have the green and yellow piece in the white and green spot. For this cube, in the green and yellow spot, they will be the white and green piece. The placement and the colors swap. And we can do that all around the puzzle. Here we have, at the green and orange spot, I've got the red and yellow piece. And at the red and yellow spot, I've got the green and orange piece. So there are people that when they get real good at it, they can trace, oh, that's going to be here in the inverse. But that's how that works. And a very straightforward way of using the inverse is that if you are just doing a straightforward solve, let's say you're doing a block building or CFOP type solve, and you're like, oh, I'm just kind of out of ideas or options, go to the inverse. Do the inverse, you have a whole separate scramble to do. And like I showed, here is my solution to the inverse scramble, and I'm going to invert that. And if we try that on the regular scramble, it will solve it. If you do it and there's something wrong, then you made a mistake in writing it down or whatever happened there. And this is where also I would avoid doing any rotations. Rotations can get kind of weird when you're trying to flip it around because sometimes there's an extra rotation you need to add to get it back to normal. I would just ignore them as best you can. Always count green as F, R as red, U for white. Just always do that. It'll make it so much easier in the end. Okay, let's now get into NISS, which is normal inverse scramble switching. And I think this should be in the exact same video as inverse because all it is instead of doing the regular scramble or doing the inverse, you go back and forth. So think of this whole thing as a circle. And I've used this analogy before, that if we are starting here, let's say this is a solved cube, and we do the regular scramble, we want to get back to that solved cube, right? But let's say we do the scramble and we do the cross. If we do all of that now from the inverse, we do the cross moves inverted and the scramble inverted, we will have a cross on this end too. And let's say we do the first couple pairs. Well, now we can backtrack and we can do the first couple pairs, and we have to keep going back and forth until we get a solved puzzle. And that way at every single spot you have multiple options you can choose from. You just have to keep remembering what's on the inverse and what is not. And now again, I have not actually done this, so we are going to do this together at the same time. And I'm going to have the process gone up. So let's do CFOP. We're going to do the cross here. So my cross is going to be B, U prime, B, U prime, B prime. And now we have a cross. So I'm going to leave that there. And I'm going to grab a new puzzle to make it easier to follow. And we are now going to go backwards. I'm going to invert and start at the B prime here, which inverted is now B, U, B prime, U, B prime. Then I'm going to do the scramble inverted. F prime U, R, U, B2. And if I do it correctly, I will have a cross here. So now I can look, and let's do a couple pairs on this side. I'm not saying what's exactly the most efficient, but let's just do a couple pairs. Don't really like any of this, but I'm going to do it anyways. F, D prime, F prime, D prime, B, D, B prime. And now we have one pair there. So let's go the other way now. And again, this is not the most efficient way. What you want to do is search for something that is more efficient than another or sets things up. But let's start with what we just did and go the other direction. And if people are writing these down, what you'll see in Fewest moves, and let me put that in my notes so I don't forget, is that they put these in parentheses. Parentheses means you're on the inverse scramble. So I'm going to now do B, D prime, B prime, D, F, D, F prime. The scramble on its normal way. And then the moves that I did originally for the cross. B, U prime, B, U prime, B prime. And now we should have the cross plus one pair. And we can see on this side what we have going on. So every single thing that you find, you have two versions to go through. And you can keep going back and forth over and over again, or you could find one that works really well. I've had some very straightforward solves, but the inverse is, I would say, the most important thing to learn. Whether you're doing CFOP or block building, or you're doing DR and HTR and stuff like that, doing the inverse gives you so many more options. And it's not just limited to going back and forth randomly. Often people will find EOs, edge orientations, that are a little bit of one and a little bit of another. So they'll do maybe a couple moves on the normal and a couple moves on the inverse, or vice versa, or one move here, three move here, things like that. So there's a lot of uses for it. So I'm going to show you the solution that I actually had for the scramble, and I got a 20 move solution. There was a 17 that I just didn't get to and I didn't see. So I'm going to write it out, and we are going to see this all in play. Let me solve these first. Now, as I'm solving these, one thing I just want to say, I feel like one of the most frustrating things in Fewest moves is when you know you have something and then you do the inverse and it's not there. And you're just thinking, where did I mess up? Did I mess up in the scrambling or unscrambling? Did I mess up in writing it down? that can be the most frustrating because you know it's there. You did it. But yeah. So the first thing I did was edge orientation, which I did L prime U D. So let me do the scramble on regular. And now this oriented all the edges on the U and D face. And you can see here, if you look through each one, I could solve every single edge without doing another 90-degree turn on U or D. And then I checked the inverse. And this is probably one of the wildest ones. There's only 2 moves to solve domino reduction, and you'll see what that looks like in just a second. So I do this on inverse. D prime, U prime, L, invert the scramble. I think I messed up. I did mess up. So yeah, if you don't find what you're looking for on the inverse that you should have already had, something went wrong. D prime, U prime, L. Now, okay. So I did domino reduction. We haven't done a video on domino reduction yet in this series. So if you're looking at this on the day and you don't know what domino reduction is, just watch for right now. But what I'm going to do is orient the edges on the R and L face while also orienting the corners in only 2 more moves. And so this is domino reduction. You can see it's got the same types of colors, the opposite colors on the top and bottom. And then went back to the regular to do half turn reduction. And there's a bunch of different ones that I did. I found half turn reduction only like 6 more moves. This one's like 9 more moves, so it's kind of a lot. But so again, now I'm going to do what I did on the inverse on the regular. So I'm going to do R prime F to start out, then the scramble, and then the 3 moves for the EO. And it should look somewhat similar. We can see those similar things here. And from here, then I just finished straightforward. So to do my HTR, just like that, and half turn reduction, now everything can be solved with only 180-degree moves. I solved everything except for 4 edges, and then I inserted an algorithm to solve those edges. Like I said, doing the inverse or going back and forth is probably the best thing to really open up possibilities for fewest moves. It's not any new algorithm, it's not anything like that. It's just the concept of going back and forth and being comfortable seeing what's the inverse and what's not. I would advise you to follow what is most commonly written. So for example, the parentheses. And I used to write things in a circular path going back and forth, and that helped me out, but it ended up being a lot of space. In my last video I made on inverse, I had quite a few people comment of something's going wrong here. I don't know what's going on. Can you help me out? And they put their scramble, what they have so far, and then we're able to look through it together and kind of figure out what that inverse looks like. And sometimes I had to make a video or something like that. But check it out. This is the big thing. Inverse, NISS, they're basically one and the same. And let me know how it goes below. You can do this with any method. Have fun with it. And yeah, leave any comments or questions down below. Hit like, subscribe for more content like this in the future, and stay tuned for more videos on fewest moves throughout the rest of this year.